Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session of the webinar. Feel free to introduce yourself on the chat. My name is Maureen Ochako. I'm the program manager for Research to Commercialization program. I'm very happy that you've been able to join us. So feel free to introduce yourself on the chat, and we'll be able to start in about 2 minutes. Welcome, Frida from Cairo. Welcome, Dekra from Mo University. Welcome, Jane. Feel at home. Welcome, Dr. Solomon. Very nice that you've been able to join us. I hope you can hear me crystal clearly. And I think we can begin, and I'll start by just giving an introduction about what R2C is and why you should care. And allow me to do that by sharing a few slides. This will just take a few minutes. Right. So we have the research to commercialization project. So if you like, utafiti kwa biashara. The idea that we need to enable biasharas in Kenya to commercialize. And this project is being implemented in collaboration with Kenya National Innovation Agency, Victoria Ventures, and is funded by FCDO under the RISE Fund Manager. So the motivation behind the program is really, we have seen over the coming years a lot of growth in the tech and innovation sector, but we have noted that the research-based innovations are lagging behind. So we want to pull up together our resources to ensure that even the research-based innovations are progressing in the same way the tech and innovation sector is progressing. And then, of course, to ensure that this amazing research that comes from university is able to get to the market, is able to resolve that societal pain point that it was done for the research in the first place. So this project has two main objectives. Number one is to strengthen the researchers' capacity by enabling them to accelerate and commercialize their products by taking them through an accelerator program, but also because we appreciate that these researchers are within institutions. So there's also an element that speaks to strengthening the institutions, ensuring that we do cascaded trainings to enable the focal people to be able to run R2C programs in their organizations. So how the program is structured, we have four main pillars. The first one is an accelerator program, and we are targeting 20 researchers. We are currently in the first cohort, where we're looking at supporting 8 researchers commercialize by linking them with the right partners, whether funding or commercial or industry partners, to ensure that their idea is commercialized. And then we have the second cohort. The advert will be out 1st of May. And the idea is that anyone who has an innovation that feels he or she needs support to commercialize should be able to apply. That's the first element. And then the second one is the TOT training, and that this is really focusing on strengthening the institution. And then we have partnership with Mawazo Institute. Actually, this week we are training researchers from Mawazo Institute, female researchers, so that they just understand the research to commercialization project and hopefully be able to commercialize their innovations. And the third pillar is the webinar, and this is one of the webinars. We have these webinars every month. And the last pillar is really coaching, hand-holding the innovators, hand-holding the trainers to ensure that they have the right skill beyond the training to be able to run R2C programs or to be able to commercialize. So yeah, like I've mentioned, for the accelerator program that is focused on researchers, we have 3 weeks of physical training focusing on different elements that are very pertinent for a researcher to commercialize. And then we have coaching, and then we have direct linkages, support, really ensuring that the researchers are linked with the partners that they deserve or they desire to. And then, of course, this is a TOT training. So there's 1 week of training, again, physical training, and then there's an element of coaching. And at the end of it all, the TOT participants are given a toolkit that enables them to be able to run R2C program within their institutions. And then we have different monthly webinars, and these are just some of them. The next month, the next webinar will be on funding landscape, understanding the funder's perspective and the funding landscape. This will be done on the 18th of May. These are some of our researchers. We have Dr. Gerald, who has a water solution. He comes from Turkana University. We have Professor Paul, who has a bio-based fertilizer innovation. He comes to us from Embu University. I'll just pick a few. We have Peter Kirui, who really has a solution to aflatoxins. I think we all appreciate that aflatoxins is a big problem in our country, in our continent, so to speak. And Peter has a solution that if it's used by farmers, it reduces the aflatoxin level in the solution, in the farm products. And then we also have Paul Kimurcho from Egerton University. He has a specific groundnut variety that is high in oil level, etc. And then we have Duncan, who has a solar dryer. It comes to us from University of Nairobi. And our idea is really to target 30 training of trainers and support 40 researchers at the very least. Thank you very much. I think that just gives us an introduction. And I'll stop sharing. Keep on introducing yourself. I think we'll go now right on to the webinar discussion. And I'll ask our panelists to kindly put on their videos and bring their energy to the room. And then I'll be introducing them. So, excellent. We'll start with Ahmed. Ahmed is a good friend of mine, and he's actually the person who worked on the first curriculum for the R2C, but allow me to allow him to introduce himself.
Yes, thank you everybody and welcome to the webinar. My name is Ahmed Abdul Wahab. I'm the CEO of Next Arabia. We provide advisory service when it comes to innovation, so helping corporates, government entities, universities to launch innovative new ventures. Yeah, we run major programs for different industries in oil and gas, telecom, airline industry, farming, energy, etc. And it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. Enos?
Hi, everyone. My name is Enos Weswa. I run an organization called venturebuilding.africa. I've also been working with startups for a long time. I've seen some of your introduction. I know I have rubbed shoulders with some of you in different programs, and it's exciting to talk to you about today's topic, which is product market fit. Yes.
Thank you. So you see, we have a very good mix of panelists who are here to talk to us about product market fit. We normally have very good innovations, but are they ready for the market? Is the market ready for our innovation, or is our innovation responding to our market need? So I think allow us to just start right on. Feel free to type your questions in the Q&A section, and as we progress, we'll be responding to some of the questions. So karibu sana, welcome to our session. I think for me, the first question would be, what is product market fit? And maybe, how do you know that your product is ready for the market? So what is a product market fit? Simple, basic, like we're talking to a 3-year-old. Enos?
Well, product market fit is simply that your product has been accepted in the market. Now, first, you need to understand the product, and you also need to understand the market. What is your market? And the market is divided into 4 parts. the innovators who are always at the front of picking on your product, the early adopters who are the second in picking up your product, the early majority and the late majority. So there's the majority has to accept your product for you to say you have a product market fit. Not the first two, not the innovators. And the innovators and the early adopters will give you some pointers on what to pick on your product, but it shouldn't be your basis to say you have a product market fit. But the majority needs to, they're the ones to tell you whether you have it.
And you bring a very interesting point, which we will get back to about the different markets. So what I'm hearing is that there's a product and there's a market. If this is a puzzle they need to meet. That's a product market fit, correct? Correct. Ahmed, you can add or give your explanation.
Yeah, so I would add, maybe if you take a step back, and I would start with ground zero and say that the most important is, which afterwards we'll build on, as what Enos mentioned, is we need to figure out whether actually, as a researcher, there's a key issues that we have as a researcher, especially in Africa and in Kenya, including Kenya, is we need to understand actually the problem out there. What is the actual problem in the market before we go into the product and the solution? Understanding the pain point in the market is the most critical element when you really start with commercialization or launching a business. So what you do is you really do a problem concept fit. So there is a pain point, for example, in the farming, and what we need to figure out is what specifically in the farming is the pain point and what could be a possible concept to actually solve it. And then when it comes, then once you understand it, and then you do the product market fit, as Anas mentioned, it determines for you whether your product is going to be successful or not in a very simple manner. So that's why it's very important to understand that you are not there to sell your product, but rather you are there to solve a pain point in the market. And the pain point in the market, that is where you need to figure out, this is my product with the jobs that need to be done and the value and the pain point that you reduce. And at the same time, from a customer's point of view, what are the expectations? What expectation when it comes to cost reduction, value adding, and the jobs to be done? And that is the match. And that's the secret that everybody's looking for.
Thank you. So you said by giving us the secret. And I think I'd like to just dig a little bit deeper in terms of what you're saying. You know, there's a problem and there's a solution, right? Yeah. So immediately you're explaining that, I was thinking the egg or the chicken. So which one comes first? I mean, I'm a researcher, so I'm already researching in this topic that I'm very passionate about, right? And I'm already, going towards, for example, climate change. But, which one, egg or the chicken? Is it problem, solution? Are they at the same point, or how would you respond?
We can put in different categories, but to make it simple, I will put in two categories. The 95% and the 5%. The majority, it's nobody cares about your product, but it's about the market need. Whether there is a real need in the market that you actually really are solving. So that should be always most of the time, number one. Unless you have something very special like Steve Jobs, etc. These are the 0.001% of companies where there is no market demand, but you create them. But to do so, you also need a lot of cash to actually create a demand. So in general, I would always say, identify first the market needs in the market, and then you develop or you adjust your initially products, the concept, before you even develop your prototype, the concept towards it. However, 3 years ago, when I called the time stopped in 2020, when COVID-19 came, the world stopped. So we needed to have a solution. So that was something that doesn't follow the normal, let's say, the new venture methodology, or if somebody has cancer, etc., that's a complete different process where there's not much customer validation to do, but you need to really develop more research and go through the traditional TRL levels to go through it. In short, focus on market needs. That's the best bet.
Thank you. I think that answers the question. So first, understanding what are the market needs or the pain points, so to speak. And yeah, thank you very much. So I'm now wondering, so I have identified this problem, right? And I have a solution that I think should respond to that problem. So how do I know that my solution or my product has attained the product market fit? We can start with Enos.
All right, thank you, Maureen, for that question. Yeah, so there's and we will always be going back to what we call problem solution fit. Now, I know there are questions that are coming ahead when it comes to the roadmap, but ideally, the problem solution fit, as Ahmed has said, is the most critical thing. And this is because there are people who can actually cheat that process, but they'll be caught way ahead. Why? Because you can actually sell hype. Come to think of it, you can sell hype. What are you exactly selling? You have a product and you go 100% into campaigns, and people will pick it as hype and try and use it. But you're selling a product, not a solution. So there's an incident where you can actually sell a product and not a solution. But where the rubber meets the road is when someone comes back. Okay? When someone comes back to consume or to use your service, then you know they were not buying the product, they were buying the solution. So I started by identifying those markets because they behave differently. And I started also, I emphasized on you need to know your product. I also emphasized on that. Why? It's because the early adopters and the innovators buy things for the sake of buying, for the sake of the hype. Those are the people who will be taken by hype. Have you had this new thing in the market? Have you tried this? But ideally, is never to solve a problem they're really experiencing. Okay? Not know, they're not affiliated to, they have not bought into the hype. They're just looking, I want to sort out this problem. They will come back. So coming back is one of the most important items. And this person who's coming back is not coming back because he knows you. And he'll be guilt-tripped because he's not buying from you. He's coming back because he doesn't care about you. All he cares is about his problem. So coming back. And then the other thing is, when you look at this characteristic of the market that buys simply for the sake of it, they always drop off. They will, so you have to look at what is that dropping off of this service. And then if the way we work, especially in this market, is that we always want to ask people when we have a problem, how they solve theirs. So there is a very important aspect of referral that works to show if you are in fact providing a solution. So I've talked about three things. One is those who will come back. Key. Those who will refer others or will find the solution through some sort of a referral point. And four, those who are they're getting off the ship, off the board. Those ones also, if you monitor. So of course there are maths to it, but I don't want to introduce the maths now, but I think I will just mention those three because they characterize the market that is early majority that you can successfully commercialize your product. You can't commercialize with this because with the early adopters and innovators, that's a very small percentage of people we are talking about. And they will do you good because they won't come back. They will just experience for the sake of experiencing.
Very well put. Ahmed, same question. How do you know your product has hit a product market fit?
So in a nutshell, it is it's exactly what Enos mentioned. To just put in a simple manner, you start everything, what you do starts and throughout the process with the customer. Understand what the customer's needs are. Are the needs really, first of all, real pain points, and do they have a budget for it? Then what you look for is, okay, is it just that one customer, or are there many others with a similar profile that actually have these pain points? And what you then do is you develop the solution with the customer by getting always feedback from the customer. And when do you know the customer, when there is a customer market fit? Yeah, you just look at your pocket, which means what I call, do you generate revenues? Are you actually making profitable revenues out of it? So not just revenues, but will you make money, profit at some point? And that's the way to look at it. So in the beginning, it's more what I call the customer validation. It's more getting more feedback, but then it gets more tangible by LOI, MOU, contract, revenues, and then it's a profit and growth, etc. This is when you really know you have a product market fit.
Excellent. I think just a follow-up question. How long does it take on average to get that product market fit in an ideal situation?
It will take exactly 3.5 months. I'm just kidding. So it depends on what kind of a product is it. So we're talking here with researchers, so universities and research centers, which means unlike regular startups, this is more asset-driven, more technology and heavy-duty driven. So this will take way longer time than the traditional startups that come up with a quick MVP, and then you can just do it. Then you also have to differentiate between, is it in their hand of the researcher to develop the product faster when we talk about the TRL level, or are there some regulators involved in it? If it's, for example, in healthcare, you have regulators in Kenya to approve it. If it's food and food administration, etc. So all of this will take longer period of time. But the customer validation, what I call, you can start with just your concept. And you can actually go as far as saying, if you are really solving a pain point in the market, real pain point, you can actually generate revenues before you have developed your actual product. How? By understanding what the customer's needs, and then since the customer, if the customer does not have any solution for it, or very bad solution, it's in the customer's interest to actually pay you something in advance to develop it faster. So that's the ultimate objective. So come back to your question, it can take between 3 months to 1 year, 3 years, whatever that is. And again, we're not talking about traditional startups, but rather researchers within universities or research centers. So it's going to take a little bit longer. We work with many researchers and universities. So it can really take between 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on what kind of heavy duty product it is, what kind of approvals does besides the customer does the researcher have to get.
Yeah, thank you. And I like the fact that you keep talking about the pain points. And then an analogy that I like to use is your product a vitamin or is it a painkiller? Because if it's a painkiller, when you're having a headache, you need that painkiller. So you're definitely going to buy that painkiller. But when it's a vitamin, sometimes I want an apple, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll take a carrot instead, etc. All right, thank you very much. We are getting into the heart of things. And I think we've all talked about customer validation, right? We've talked about the early adopters and, but before we even talk about customer validation, I think I've had one of you talk about the minimum viable product. So what is this for purposes of our attendees? And what does this look for? And I know this is what we use to get customer validation. So what is a minimum viable product? How does it look like in our case for researchers? Enos?
Okay, great. So again, I'll go back. Okay, so for the process of really validation, we have quite a number of validations. So the first one, I think you've heard about prototyping. Just prototyping would give you the minimum data about usability. So that could be user validation and so forth. But minimum viable product is not a prototype. A prototype is something that generates your first data point. But minimum viable product, it's a product. It's a real product. It has minimum features that someone can actually use and purchase. Okay? So in other words, sometimes we call it minimum sellable product. It has minimum features, but it is working. It is not something that, and that's why you can only validate the customer. Customer is someone who pays. If you have something that could be paid, could be used, and someone can get the experience and see that this is the offering. Now, for prototype, a prototype can just be what we call a pre-sale kind of thing. And I'll give example. If you have a poster and tell people, do A, B, and C, follow this and do A, B, and C, and this will happen. You might not have a product, but you're just doing a pre-sale to get an idea how many people are interested in. But for a minimum viable product, it goes beyond the interest, is how many people can buy. That's why its viability has to be tested. Viability is about financial viability. How much money you're going to use to make the product vis-a-vis how much money you're going to make by selling the product. So, but prototyping is at different levels. And I think that's been a very big confusion, but prototype can be almost close to the product, but it's you trying to understand what data do I need and what do I build for that data. It could be a landing page and say, if you're interested in scooters, sign up. You do not have the scooters, you do not have the product, but the people who will make the sign up will actually show you that there's interest. So you pick it as interest. That's just a prototype.
May I add?
Yes, please.
So just working with universities. So as a researcher, there's no specific cutting point. You have an MVP or prototype, etc. It actually depends, and that's what Enos touched on, and I want to go a little bit more detailed, is what is your objective in the beginning? Based on your specific objective in the beginning, the MVP, the minimum viable product, could be either this one. I just put, it's my notebook, I just write down, just do some drawings. This could be already the MVP, but just doing drawings on the paper. Or it could also end up in kind of functional product, the MVP. So it depends on what is your objective. If your objective is, and which should be, in the beginning, to step by step validate that you understand the problem, and then you understand the pain point. So what you're doing is your MVP is just your pen, and you take a paper and you design the possible solution. That's going to be your MVP. And then in the next phase, where you understood what the clients really wants, and the client saw it as a drawings, for example, then you develop just one feature, one little feature of it, whatever it is, and then you come back. Your MVP changed it to another level, and then you get the feedback from that one feature, and then you get to the next feature, and then the next feature. So in other words, your MVP itself is changing. As a matter of fact, I don't believe there's any commercial product existing in the world. They're all MVP or prototype, because there's no product that I know of that developed and said, hey, this is my commercial product, now done, khalas, it's finished. There's always to improve. There's always to improve. And that's what we need to have. And that's the crux, for example, that we don't have it in a TRL, the technical readiness level. This kind of mentality. The TRL tells you, oh, the product is there, now mass test on the mass market, and then it's finished. It's the wrong way, it's the wrong approach. So we should have always the MVP or prototype methodology or mentality that we always strive to improve.
Thank you. So we need to be adaptable, we need to be agile to respond to what the market wants. That's what you're saying. So thank you very much. And now my question to you, Ahmed. So how then do you collect data maybe, or how do you get that feedback from your customers?
Yeah. So it starts with, the most important is you have to understand what the customer wants. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs, and even worse, researchers, sorry to say that we are in a research environment, go to a company and I just go and they show up to throw up. What I mean is they show up to say, hey, look at my product, it's so beautiful. Look at my baby, what you want to take it and buy it, etc. Nobody cares about the product. So number one is identify the pain points and let the customer know that you understand the pain point, which most entrepreneurs and most researchers don't do. So once you show to your client, your potential client, that you understand their pain point, then the client will give you actually time for follow-up and the next and the next and the next, because you are developing something for them. I give you a specific example of my own startup, one of my own startup. So we developed a kind of next generation e-learning platform. It's like the next generation Blackboard. So we designed a beautiful on the design, on the keynote presentation, the PowerPoint, the way it could work. And we talked to customers, said, do you want this? And they said, you know what, Ahmed, it's actually nice, but it's not what we want. So we then stopped talking, we just listened. We realized God gave us one mouth and two ears, which means we should more listen to it than talking. Unlike what I'm doing right now, I apologize. So what we figured out was that the faculty members had a different objective than the students and the administration. And then we need to figure out who's actually the paying customer. The paying customer, not the students, not the faculty, but the admin. So, and the admin's objective was, we pay money not for the platform, but for the intelligence. And we thought, the intelligence, we give it for free. But since that was the part that they actually paid for, we switched the whole model. We haven't developed any product. It's just on concept. So you pitch them the learning intelligence, and to get the learning intelligence, they have to use the platform. So coming back to your question is, we told them right in the beginning, we understand your pain points, and we repeated what we heard from a customer. And that's another maybe story to tell, that what customer says are not necessarily what they actually mean or what they're thinking about. So there's a way of how do you actively learn to listen to customers. So once you understand the pain point, you tell them, we're going to go back and we adjust the product to fit your needs. So we went back on the PowerPoint, we adjusted what they want, we came back, is this what you want? They said, actually, it's not, it's coming close, but can you do this and that and this and this? And we said, yeah, sure, we can do it. So we went back and we adjusted it. We adjusted still on the PowerPoint keynote. And then we went back and they said, oh, this comes down very, very close. This comes very, very close. Can you also connect it to an ERP system? As an entrepreneur, I said, sure. And my tech person, he hit me in my knee and said, Ahmed, don't promise that. I said, don't worry, we're going to figure it out. So sure, we can do it. So I went back and we adjusted. Is this what you want? I said, yes, exactly what we want. So what's happening is something magic is happening. We're building a trust by going back to the customer. And the only reason why the customer gives us time to come back is they see that we executing their needs. So we're listening to them and we are customizing it really for them. But of course, it's not just for them, but others have the same problem. But we let the customer know it's customized for you. So this trust is very, very critical because the outside world, they know that startups and special researchers, most of them will never be successful. Again, maybe I shouldn't have said that here, but that's just how it is. So knowing that most ventures fail, they don't want to give you a time. But if you focus on you provide value to solve their pain points, they will give you the time. And then you build trust. And trust is one of the most important elements to, at the end of the day, to sign a contract. To coming back to your question, is this building the rapport, the trust building. And the only way you build trust is that you go back. Number one, you start with, we understand the problem. Number two, we're going to solve it, customize for you. And then you show them one by one that you are adding more value than anything that is out there in the market. And that's how you build, you can get trust and feedback from the client and sign a deal at the end of the day. I think Maureen is not inviting back to any webinar.
No. I think we're learning a lot from you, and you're very brutally honest, maybe that's the word I can use. So I think what I'm hearing is that we show up to throw up, which is not what we should do as innovators, as researchers. But the key point is that we co-create the solution. So I come, I listen to what you're talking about, I adapt my solution, just keep on that interaction to ensure that we have the final product that the customer wants. And I think you said something, and I wanted to now ask Enos to respond. You said sometimes the customers speak, but they're not even they're not sure what they want. And then how do I deduce what is actually what they need and what is not what they need? Enos?
All right. Thank you, Maureen. Now, that's a very interesting question, and it's happened many times for startups trying to develop solutions. And I always, when I talk about this subject, I always refer to Steve Jobs, who said that he doesn't ask customers what they need. Okay, it's controversial, but I am that guy who would want to understand why did he say that. And I think he based his argument on Henry Ford's statement, who said, if I had asked people what they needed, they would have told me a faster horse, because they have no clue what a car looks like. Okay? Now, these two people, they tend, I always say they lied to us. And it's very interesting. I would stand to be corrected, but when you are down there trying to figure things out with the customer, they know their problem. They know how they have been trying to handle it. There's at least evidence of what they're trying to do to solve that problem. The problem is they do not have an idea of what the product is. So do not give them the solution, because it is not in their capacity to come up with solutions. Solutions are inside the innovator. But to them, they have the language that will lead you to the right solution. I hope you understand. So they might not necessarily tell you they need a car, but by just telling you they need a faster horse, you don't need to think of a horse because they are prescribing to themselves the solution. You need to pick what we call the doing word, which is faster. Okay, there in the book that I've been trying to put together, I pick the adjective. When you have this conversation, you pick the adverb and the adjective, and you do not pick the noun, or rather, you do not pick the noun. The verbs, you pick the verbs. You pick the verbs. The noun is usually a suggested solution, which they might not necessarily have the capacity to actually understand, but they will give you their point of view of what it means to solve that problem. So they just want to move faster. I will pick faster and ask myself, how can I help them move faster? And I will come up with a bicycle. I will come up with a motorbike. I will come up with a car. But if I tell them, what would you need? And to them, they interpret it as I'm trying to ask them, what solution would you prefer? They will tell me, they will throw me off, okay? So that's one aspect. So these people actually picked the verb and they did not dwell on the noun. They did not dwell on what the customer prescribed. They dwell on how are you tackling it now? So of course, there's a structure to it, at least, thank God, we have gone through this cycle, and of course, tools have been developed, like in design thinking, in Javelin experiment board, conducting an interview. But what is interesting that Ahmed said is that they can say one thing and do completely the opposite, what we call gap analysis. Like what people say and do are differently. So when you're collecting this data, there are 3 levels. One is the normal interview and the surveys, which is based on just asking questions. But as Ahmed has brought, a very key is trust. When someone trusts you, they will tell you the most important, crucial part. But if they don't trust you, they will tell you what you need to hear. And given that there's that in the market, you always have to be very careful, like establish the trust, 1. 2, just some things you don't need to base them on entirely asking questions, but observing. Observation is also a level of uncovering some insights, and then immersing yourself. So immersing, it means you have time and you have the resources to experience what they're experiencing and understand, okay, this means this means this to them. But ultimately, what Ahmed has said, establishing trust allows them to open up, allows them to be vulnerable, and to tell you exactly what they feel they want. In this part of the world, especially in Kenya, we cheer people into failing because we think it's our obligation to motivate them even when we are pointing them on the wrong direction. And that's why it's been really hard to pick, is this what really the market is saying? Or is this hype? Or is this and so forth. So those are some of the things those are two things that I think when it comes to saying something and doing the opposite, or not knowing what they need, really has been, yes.
I saw Ahmed nodding. Do you want to add, or I can go to the next question? I think you elaborated it very well, and even I was wondering, when I'm always asked to give feedback, am I giving feedback to build, or am I also just being nice? Like you're saying, in this side of the world, we have a tendency to be nice, so to speak. So I like the way you're saying, you know, we are doing the interviews and the survey, but our ideal is to create trust so that the respondents are vulnerable to actually tell us the problem. But I also really, really like the fact that we need to listen not to the noun, right? But the verb, the adjectives, the adverbs, because we're focusing on the problem. So if I understand the problem as an innovator, understand it crystal clearly, then I would know what solution that I'm offering to that particular problem. Okay. That has been very well elaborated. I saw Ahmed, do you want to respond, or I can go to the next question?
Yeah, maybe just to add one thing, which is really very critical, and that touches, and I'm sure now Mario is not going to invite me anymore.
I will. We still have a few minutes.
The ego. And that's a sensitive aspect, especially for researchers, etc. When researchers worked on 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they believe it's really valuable because they worked for 5, 6, 7 years. But from a company, corporate, or from a market perspective, that means nothing. So it's very important to, right in the beginning, to detach yourself from the product and get rid of the ego and really focus, to be very humble, to really listen. And that's not so easy. It's not easy for entrepreneurs, and it's even more difficult for researchers and faculty. But that's critical. If you don't have that mindset, you will hear, but you will not understand. Yeah, you will hear things that even if the potential customer says very clearly what he or she wants, the researcher will not understand it because of that mentally status of, oh, I'm a faculty, I worked on it for 6, 7, 10 years, and you have to buy it, etc. etc. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, it's yeah, I think we were calling it founder's ego, because I feel like I am the one who knows the solution, and therefore you all need to listen to me.
Especially I'm a faculty, I teach, so I should know. I know what it is. Especially I'm a faculty, that's how faculty and researchers are. Since they're teaching, so they have the mentality, I know everything.
Excellent. Ooh, hard facts today. Okay, I see there's a question from Peter Kibet, and maybe I'll ask Ahmed to respond to it. But the question is, how can the industry or customer support development of the innovations from the researcher? Question number 1, how can that partnership be structured? I hope you can just respond to that, and feel free to type your question on the Q&A session. We have about 10 minutes to our closure. So feel free to respond to Kibet's question.
Be very direct, not diplomatic, just very direct. So the industry does not care about any kind of innovation. What they care about is solving their pain points. And what are their pain points? It is, are you as an innovator or researcher, are you increasing my revenues? Are you reducing my costs? Are you increasing my efficiency? Are you increasing my effectiveness? Are you increasing my productivity? Are you reducing my risk? Are you increasing the health status? Whatever it is, and you have to think about bottom line impact. Businesses are there to make, not just to make money. Businesses are there to make a lot of money. Not money, but their businesses are there to make a lot of money. So you need to understand that they are there to make money. So they would only invest and support the development of innovations for researchers if you solve pain points to the market. So if you're in, for example, in agriculture, if you have something, it's a next generation fertilizer in Kenya that really doubles the production of, I don't know, avocado, banana, or whatever it is. If you have something really unique to significantly increase, absolutely yes. Or another example, if you can find, for example, one of the biggest issues that we have, not only in Kenya, but overall Africa and worldwide, in the banking industry, is they're looking for advanced face recognition. So not just face recognition that you have on an iPhone, but for security reasons, advanced face recognition. Anything that significantly adds value, not just adds 5% or 10%, but let's say 20% or even more. Because as big companies, it's not so easy that they change their supplier. But if they change their supplier, then they should really argue why they should change it. And specifically, why working with a university? Because universities, they don't have that business-driven mindset. So you need to show them that you are not a regular researcher or faculty member, but you are actually an entrepreneur that is there to solve their pain points. If you can deliver that message, then they will not finance you to support you. They're supporting you because they need you. So don't think about they're supporting your innovation. They don't care about your innovation. But what they care about is that you have something that can help them to make money or reduce cost, whatever it is. And that's the funding that they're gonna give you.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So even as we're working with the researchers and helping them commercialize, we need to focus on what their solution is doing to that businessman, to that farmer, to that government official, for example. So I think you've articulated it very well. And we have moved from the problem, and now we are selling the solution specifically. And I like the way you are giving the examples. There was increase, or decrease, the solution that increases efficiency, the solution that increases revenue, the solution that decreases risks. So I'm like, this is how I would therefore sell my solution to that pain point that I had identified. All right. I think we're almost coming to the end, but my perhaps last question would be, because you have been in this sector, both Enos and Ahmed, for a long time, what are some of the lessons that you have learned, or through the companies and startups that you have supported in terms of getting their product market fit? What are some of the lessons that you have learned and you would like to share? Feel free to name the specific companies if that's okay. And we could start with Ahmed.
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, we're working with one that we in Kenya, one of the largest mobile payment provider. There are not many. We work with, so we cannot go into details, but let me tell you another example. So in an oil and gas industry, we work with a university and one of the leading oil and gas industry in the MENA region. Their pain point from an industry perspective was, one of the pain points was oil recovery. And the specific pain is that there's a lot of oil leaked in the sea, and that costs a lot of money for the oil and gas company to really just recover the oil. And that is throughout all the world. Most of the companies have exactly the same problem. So we looked at then one of the leading universities in the region, and they actually developed a material that would suck the oil in the sea, almost 95% off. I don't want to say 100%, but there's nothing 100%, but most of the part, between 90 to 95%, it sucks the oil. And they developed the material, but they didn't know how to actually do the product market fit. So we focus on the corporate saying, your pain point is oil recovery, and you have significant costs associated with. Not only are they not making money out of it, it's actually leaking. The leaking oil means leaking cash. So then we look at the university and said, why don't you adjust the material? And we develop a business model that you add value for them. If you would have talk with each other directly, they would never understand each other. Because the corporate would say, we have pain points, we're losing money. and the university will say, oh, we have a beautiful material, the ingredients are XYZ, etc. So what we did is we coached both and said, let's take the material and do a simple lab test where we can show that most of the oil is sucked out, and then it can be actually reused. And the next step is now doing a field test, an actual field test. And the interesting business model around it is now the following. Not only can this material reduce the cost of the oil leakage, but actually can provide the oil and gas company additional revenues by reselling this oil, the regenerated oil on the second oil market. So not there's several markets in oil. So the second market oil, and that's a significant impact. That's a very significant impact.
Thank you. I think that's a very practical example. And I think Enos, in one minute, you can respond to the same question, but also there's a question from Gentoroy Teach. How can one identify uniqueness of a solution to solve pain points? So just marry the two and then we'll close.
All right, great. Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Mohammed, for that example. And for me, I think, not that I think, over time, I have come to realize that there is a mindset to it when it comes to commercialization. It's not easy. And I think Mohammed's approach is quite important.
Ahmed.
And I think Ahmed's approach is quite important because what they're trying to do is to bridge the biggest gap, which is the business mindset that most researchers might not have. And it's just fair enough that if you're good at one thing, you might not be as good at another thing. So creating those value proposition for them and business and business model is quite key. And that's just a model that exists out there that can help in terms of really building the venture, what we call venture building. Now, currently, we are working with a number of organizations for venture building. In the organization I work with called Innovate Now. So Innovate Now, it's the first accelerator program for assistive technology. Assistive technology is technology that helps persons with disability. And it's even harder to commercialize some of the ideas because they are mostly research related. And I feel that big gap. But given that with the current cohort we have, there are quite a number of things that we've introduced, which is venture building, to allow them to articulate their value proposition to the stakeholders, the different players in the market. As Ahmed has said, this market is brutal. It only understands the language of what is the most important value you're bringing on board for me. And is it worth my pay, or is it worth me noticing? But because of the interest of time, I might not dwell on individual startups, but I am more than willing to share case studies on the same of how we unlocked some of the business model, and that would be very interesting to share. And then just for the questions that was asked, to really knowing how unique your product can get is a very complex question that might actually need another sitting. But ideally, what we call unique value proposition, you ask yourself questions like, how hard is it for someone to replicate it? So is it, and we are not basing it on the product alone. Many people think it's just the product, but you can have a distribution channel that people would take 10 years to replicate. And then you already are having a very unique value proposition. And to that effect, you create that monopoly. So don't just look at the product, look at every facet of the business and ask yourself, how hard is it for someone to replicate. That will form the uniqueness that perhaps will give you that scalability, because you cannot scale if you do not have that monopoly, a bit of monopoly. If you're just in the competition, the market can swallow you. So you also need to figure that out.
Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of our session. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. This has been very, very insightful. We have talked about, the problem market fit, then the problem solution, and then now the product market fit, how to really attentively listen to the customer, how to understand what their problem is, and then not necessarily giving them the chance to tell us the solution that they want, because we're the innovators. So we listen to the problem and then we give them the solution that they need. And then I think we also talked about, the different markets in the different levels, and how do you know you have achieved product market fit. And I think Ahmed was saying it should be within 3 months, you should be able to break even on a light note. But it's just saying when you're able to when the books are balancing, when you're able to collect revenue, when you're able to get people buying into your solution. So thank you very, very much. And I think I also like the examples that they gave. So ladies and gentlemen, I have only 2 announcements. Our next webinar is on the 18th of May. And we're talking about the funder's perspective and the funding landscape. This is a big problem because we have good solutions, but we want to secure funding. So how do you go about it? So hoping to see you on the 18th of May, on the Thursday from 11 to 12 p.m., just like today's time. And then the next announcement is that we have the call for proposal for the cohort 2 of the researchers. It will be launched on the 1st of May. Look out for it, and we hope to work together to help you commercialize your innovation. So thank you very much. Have a good day. And happy pre-Eid to Ahmed, Eid al-Fitr. So thank you very much. Allow us. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for organizing, and thanks for all the questions. Much appreciated. Thanks for all the wishes.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and I wish every participant all the best. Kindly get in touch, and I'm sure we can do much more than just the conversation here. Great.
Thank you. That is great. Have a lovely rest of the week. Have a happy holiday tomorrow and the rest of the weekend. Ciao, ciao.